partial score on my ESPN2 screen right now. Dateline, College Station, Texas. It looks as if it's the NCAA. It's a softball regional game, opening round. And it's UConn taking on 15th ranked Texas A&M. Here's the score. This is, by the way, looks like top 05. Texas A&M 17, UConn 1. I could swear that in the last 25 college softball games I've seen, I haven't seen 17 runs combined in all of those games. Isn't every score like 3-2 or 1-0? I thought the pitchers were way ahead of the hitters. 17 runs in a softball game in the fifth inning. Who knew? Maybe it's a brave new world. Welcome, Bumper to Bumper, Friday Football Beast edition of the program. Barreiro and part-time guy Brett Blakemore, who's pretty much full-time guy, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
In for Guardsy today. And we are delighted that you are here for today's broadcast, which will indeed go the distance yet again. Under more ideal circumstances, we would be broadcasting from the Cage, downtown Minneapolis. Or downtown St. Paul. The moldy Fallness studios. The problem is the Wolves game, yet again, doesn't start till close to 9. So there's not going to be much traffic when we're on the air till 6:30. And the fatal flaw on the St. Paul side is your Minnesota Wild did not get to Game 6.
It's frustrating.
They were eliminated, as most of you know by now, in Game 5. Billy Guerin did not speak today. All I've seen is postmortems from players to this point. I have not heard from the head coach or the general manager, or have I missed something?
That's It hasn't come across my desk.
Yeah, well, we'll get all of this clarified with bonus Russo Radio. We think Russo is going to be ready to join us. It's tentative because he's a busy man. He's got a lot of stuff going, but he's tentatively listed to join us at 4:30. Could be a little later than that. Ben Gessling moved to 5:02 today. Lavelle will be with us at 5:30. He's got some explaining to do. And at the bottom of this hour, some bonus Jonny Athletic will update us on any potential lineup changes for your Minnesota Timberwolves tonight.
I'm being told, by the way, from the Moldy Studios that Bill Guerin and John Hines will be on Monday. So I'm hoping we get Guerin that day or too early in the week, certainly. But I had a hunch it was just players today. Did you happen to see any or hear any of the Quinn Hughes postmortem? I mean, I read the headline that
you got to see it.
Yeah,
you got to see it. If you listen to Quinn Hughes, now he's an understated guy in general. I thought somebody died. The tone he had was as if, we'll give you details at the end of this conversation about flower donations, or whether you'd rather instead donate to your favorite charity or this charity or whatever the case may be. Wow. I guess that's a good sign in a sense that he's taking it hard, because maybe that means he does, as he claimed, wants to stick around. I'm not quite as inspired or aroused by that commentary, because that's movable. Now, Louis has guaranteed it. Louis yesterday guaranteed it in Charles Barkley-like fashion that Quinnesota will stay in Minnesota. And that would be obviously very, very big news. But I think you got to be careful assuming that because he said, I mean, come on. What's he going to say? No, not sure. Don't want to talk about it. Whatever the case may be, we'll see. So there'll be plenty of Wild postmortem today that we didn't get to yesterday, and plenty of Timberwolves. Would it be called pre-mortem? If the Wolves are eliminated tonight, would this be pre-mortem? I hope not. I want to see it go. You know me, I do not look forward to the abyss. We milk enough out of the Vikings as it is. So I'm hoping, at the very least, the Wolves can extend this damn series to 7 games. Game 7 would be Sunday in San Antonio, Davie. I don't even know if a time has been set for such a would-be game, but they have to win tonight, obviously, to get there. And this program prides itself on what we think is the righteous defense of one Stifle Tower, Rudy Gobert. We tend to mock and ridicule those who tend to evaluate Rudy on viral video bites, not on actually watching the influence that he often has over a game's outcome, certainly on the defensive side. But I will say, because we, try to stay honest with it, that he's got to play less tonight. I don't hold out any hope that he's going to be out of the starting lineup because I just don't think that's how Finchie rolls. But it's fairly clear that you got to throw. I'm not even sure if I'd be saying this would be throwing something different at the Spurs. They've seen some of it with some success, where Rudy has been on the bench in a fourth quarter, and we've seen good success from Naz Reid in that position. But it's real simple here. It's basketball 101. I think that should dictate a change, or certainly a change of emphasis, if not in the starting lineup. A, you're down to your last bullet, right? You can't lose tonight. And B, what's the biggest difference between the number one big man the Wolves are facing in this series and that they faced in the previous one? Well, Joker is maybe one of the top 5 offensive players who ever lived. His skills are abundant. We've gone through all of that. He's one of a kind. But he's not a great defensive player, and he's not a defensive roamer. You don't have to worry. If his man is Rudy, he could cheat a little off of him, but he's not enough of a defensive presence or shot blocker where Rudy being limited offensively, generally being around the basket, is going to matter, because Joker doesn't really change much. He's a very good defensive rebounder, but he doesn't change shots for the other team. What does Wemby do? Wemby changes everything, not just around the basket. He has the quickness, the range, the wingspan to be seemingly from one side of the court, from basically one end of the baseline to the other in no time. What discourages him from doing that? Well, only one thing: having to guard somebody, having the obligation of chasing or at least getting in the same area code as the guy he's supposed to guard. Well, we know well that he's not worrying about guarding Rudy, because Rudy just doesn't provide that much of a threat, and he certainly isn't going to shoot three-pointers. So what you have to have with Wemby, to at least limit, you're not going to stop, but limit some of his defensive versatility and flexibility of getting everywhere and going from one side to the other, is someone who will make him pay if he strays too early, too consistently, too often. And that is why, at this point, I think, even though it, believe it or not, does hurt you at the other end, somebody just had some stats today, I think it was ESPN, about some of the defensive stats. Actually, when Wemby has been guarded by Rudy, he's been nowhere near as effective. So you have to pull Wemby away from the basket occasionally, and that clearly means Naz Reid, a different combination of players. And so and we've seen occasionally Finchie go to that. But to me, that's a requirement tonight, even if you don't want to change your starting lineup, you have to give Wembanyama something to think about on the defensive end. And that's generally going to be Nas outside. It can be even maybe Nas getting away from the basket and getting past him. We have, believe it or not, that's doable. It's not easy, but it can be done. There's only so many adjustments you can make at this point. That is to me, a required one. That's a must to give yourself a chance to extend this series. Now, in a best case world, you get a professional performance out of Julius Randle. Is that too much to ask? Depends on how you want to play the odds. The odds would say he's due because he's been so dreadful through the most of the first 5 games of this series. And that's why I think it's less likely, as much as people want Randle benched, they want him cut, they want him out of here. I understand some of that, but in the short term, I think you have to keep trying to hope that this is the game where, for whatever reason, even from, let's say, 3-point range, he gets hot. He's been terrible from 3, but he gets hot because on a given night he can. It's the Rudy part of this, I believe, and this comes from somebody, and this, by the way, doesn't change the fact that Rudy was instrumental to the Wolves knocking off Denver in the last round. I heard Charles Barkley say it again this morning. The job he did on Joker is the best individual job any center has ever made defensively on Joker. That's the sick world we're in. He's getting abused now. He's looking silly at times now. And it's as if we get this amnesia where, as if the first round didn't happen. No, the first round happened, boys and girls. That's the only reason they're in this spot. But this matchup isn't working. He, even by his own standards, I don't think has played particularly well. And for both of those reasons, and especially the reason of trying to get Wemby to not have free reign as a roving defensive back, as a monster back, so to speak, back there, you got to make him pay if he's roaming in the paint, cheating too much off of his own man. Cheating off Rudy doesn't mean much. Cheating off of Naz Reid, for example, can mean something. So that's pretty much where we're at. I'm sure we'll get into more of that with Jonny, as I said, at the bottom of the hour. 64686 is the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line. I have not had a chance to reboot it yet. I will during this break. Do we have bonus bucks on a Friday?
We do. The Fan and BigDeck.com. I'm going to give you a shot to win bonus bucks to the National Cash Contest. Head to KFAN.com. The keyword is family. The keyword family. KFAN.com. Keyword family.
My sources say Blake Moore is already whining about the Green Bay Packers schedule. We'll find out if that's true. We'll give you a couple thoughts on the Vikings side of the schedule as well when we return.
Bumper to Bumper with Dan Barreiro on The Fan.
From the 1-800-ASK-GARY Traffic Center. This report is sponsored.
Are you looking to score tickets to some of the biggest games and concerts in town? From Santana, Doobie Brothers, 311, Chris Stapleton, and more. But your chance is just sitting there waiting. KFAN.com, keyword contest. KFAN.com, keyword contest.
My sources say, Blake Moore, you are whining about the fact that your club has to open the season here against the Purple because your high maintenance, if occasionally effective, defensive anchor might not be available for that opener. Is that true? I thought he was going to be ready for the start of the season.
Well, that was the hope. But it looks like he's probably going to start in the pup.
Who are we talking about?
We're talking about Micah Parsons.
Okay, that's what I thought. I want to be sure it's the same guy.
Yeah, so it looks like he's starting on the pup most likely. So that's 4 games.
Oh, you mean for the season?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
That's the diagnosis. I would love for him to be ready for week 1 at US Bank Stadium. That'd be great.
So for you, it's the conspiracy. Make sure that, it'll be a tainted victory. In other words, if the Vikings win that opener, you'll consider it tainted, or that the schedule makers are working on behalf of the Purple to give them a little bit, an advantage that we will only have to face, unless we meet in the playoffs, of course.
Yeah.
Your guy once during the regular season, not twice. Is that correct?
The Green and Gold faithful were looking when the schedules came out, what were the games 1 through 4?
Yeah.
And how is that going to pan out? Now, the schedule is...
Who else do you have? Who are your next 3?
So it's Vikings, then at Jets, Falcons at home, at Tampa Bay.
Tampa's not going to be easy necessarily, but it's winnable.
So
you got nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
They did you a favor.
It was Guardsy, I'm assuming your source is Guardsy.
Yes.
Saw me right when the schedule came out, and I was rolling my eyes. Now I look at it, I'm like, we get a late bye, and 3 out of the 4 are relatively, 4 of 4 are winnable. 2 of them are cupcakes, so which, of course, means they're going to lose one of those games, because I said that. It worked out all right. But I was a little annoyed last night, yes.
So now that I've had a little bit more time to study the Vikings schedule, most of you I probably already know it by heart. It's been discussed and reported on so extensively. After hosting Green Bay in the opener, the Vikings go to Chicago to take on the Bears, Tampa Bay to take on the Bucks. Then they host Miami, go to New Orleans, bye week early, week 6, host the Colts, at Detroit, host Buffalo. To me, I guess there's 2 stretches that could be meaty. Do I take the Colts seriously? I don't know. Let's leave them out. At Detroit on Sunday, November 1, and then you host Buffalo, then you're at Green Bay, and then you play San Francisco and Mexico City. That's a pretty meaty 4-game stretch, I would argue. But then you get the relief, I think, Atlanta, and I know Carolina's improving, but still not great, team follows. Then you're at New England. Who knows what they are? Might they get exposed by a much tougher schedule this year? Don't know. But it's a road game. So you could say, starting with December 10, well, no, that's not that tough a stretch, because you're at New England, you're hosting Detroit. Obviously, they can be good, and you're hosting Washington, legitimate team. That's a flex game, by the way. That could end up being, I think, a Saturday night game, depending on the condition of the teams at that time. And then you got a gimme, January 3rd, you're at New York to take on the Jets, and then you finish the regular season against the Chicago Bears. So we've talked about this before, was it last year or the year before, where we mentioned you got an relatively easy schedule early, get some equity, put yourself in prime position. Let me see. Let's go back to, let's see the 25 season. How did the 25 season go? That was when we were at Chicago, not an easy place to start. That was, the McCarthy hero ball game. And then we had Atlanta here, and that's the game you obviously have to win. When you looked at their schedule last year, you said, you got some equity early. Take advantage of it. And we laid an egg. We lost to Atlanta 22-6. Then we beat Cincy easy. Then we lost to Pittsburgh. And then, although we did beat Cleveland. The bottom line is, when we got to the really meaty part of the schedule, right? Baltimore, Chicago home, at Green Bay, at Seattle, and we lost all 4 of those games. We needed the buffer. We needed the insurance that a fast start, a 5-1 start, dare I say it, even a 6-0 start might have given us, to absorb that period of the schedule. That is what I always look for, is places where you got to make hay to protect yourself later. And there's 2 stretches that are a little bit, not as long, meaty, but meaty. And you got to take, I think, full advantage of your openings. Now, again, year to year, teams change, right? We've learned that we can't assume that a team that was bad last year is going to be bad this year. Isn't that how it works?
It is.
Texts are coming in. I'm about to sneeze. Hold on. I think if I sneeze, you can fill in for me. A lot of good texts coming in. PA can't find a loss. Shocker, did he say 17-0?
Oh, he was looking for his binoculars the whole time. Couldn't see anything.
That doesn't surprise me. That does not surprise me at all. Think about what the NFL has become. You have the regular season and postseason themselves, juggernauts. Nothing touches them in North America, certainly not the United States. NFL season and postseason. It's not even, it's Godzilla compared to any of the other sports. But then, after the season is over, you have something called the Combine that has become a thing, an entity in of its own. You have something called the National Football League Draft, another monster, all of its own, separate, connected, but separate from the regular season and postseason. And then you have NFL schedule release day, another monster. So think about, put all that together. The sport of football, NFL, dominates with the games themselves, but beyond the games, they have found a way to make at least 3 other events seem momentous in nature, and they don't involve any wins and losses in terms of scoreboard. Remarkable, is it not? It just shows that our thirst for anything related to pro football cannot be slaked. Is that the word? I think that's the right word. When you look up the words slaker, S-L-A-K-E-R. What does it say? You find it? It exists, doesn't it? There used to be a beer, I thought, that was referred to as the Thirst Slaker.
I don't think that's what you're looking for. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a different spelling.
Yeah, it might be a different spelling. Yeah. I don't know. We'll look it up. In any case, is it any wonder that the National Football League is undefeated, unstoppable, and in no danger? Remember when Mark Cuban said fat cats get slaughtered? No, or is that Mike Zimmer? It might have been both. I don't think it'll ever be topped. And I think it'll continue to get big. We're going to eventually get to 20 games. There's no question about that. We just got to be sure we don't run out of players. Bottom of the hour break. Let's chat with Jonny Athletic. Will he already be at Target Center? Probably not. A little early. Lineup changes, strategic changes. He's got his finger on the pulse of the club. We'll find out what he thinks might be headed our way when the Wolves, right here on the Fan, host the San Antonio Spurs Davy later tonight.
You're listening to Barreiro on the Fan.
For more information about contests on the station, go to KFAN.com/rules.
Again, Moreau.
Jonny Athletic. And he's on with Dan Barreiro right now.
Before we say hi to Jonny Athletic, this is from Going Postal Guy, responding to our schedule discussion. The schedule release is so stupid. You're smart enough, Dan. I can't believe you truly think knowing which order the games are in is a big deal. I guess the NFL loves press, but talking about when the games take place should be a 2-minute conversation and move on to talking about bike lanes or bathhouses or literally anything else. Well, I'll ask an objective observer, Jonny Athletic, to answer that, because I would suggest that what Going Postal Guy says sounds perfectly logical and rational. But the facts are the facts, as Tibbs used to say. The interest is undeniable. It is extensive. And for whatever reason, the NFL has marketed itself to such a place where there seems to be, for a lot of people, including in the media, a meaningful distinction between knowing who you're going to play on the schedule and when you're going to play them. To actually be able to put each date, team, game, put all that stuff together. I can whine about it. He can whine about it. But it's undeniable, is it not?
It is undeniable at this point, Dan. I mean, there's nothing that sort of gets my hackles up more than when I see a reporter out there saying sources say the Vikings will play the Buccaneers on, December 20th. Right. And it's ridiculous. It's stupid, but it is also what the market wants. And, there are some times where we can, as reporters, can be above what the market wants and say, come on now, here, eat your vegetables too. But there is no denying that there is an appetite for this. You can justify it by saying, yes, it is meaningful in terms of knowing the exact order and when the toughest stretches of the schedule are and things of that nature. But by and large, it just really does speak to the insatiable appetite for NFL content, especially this time of year when we're past the draft and we're kind of in this lull. People want it. This is the king of sports and of society in a lot of ways in America right now. And so I think we're kind of obligated to fill that void when it's there.
You're probably too young to remember an advertising campaign for Falstaff beer. Are you familiar with the Thirst Slaker advertising slogan?
I am not. No, that is a little before me.
We were talking about, I knew the term existed, and that's what it was. In the 60s, Falstaff, the Thirst Slaker. That's pretty good, actually. I don't know if anybody would even understand it today. But I wasn't wrong on the definition of the word. Slake is a versatile verb that most commonly means to satisfy, quench, or allay a craving or desire. So if you love beer, presumably you're going to love Falstaff, and the beer, that beer will slake, it will satisfy your craving or your desire for, I guess, another beer, something to drink. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying. I mean, you're not a big beer guy,
like
right?
that very much. It fits exactly with what this day has become in the NFL calendar. Is the league really knows that there is this lull, that here's a way to inject ourselves back into the social consciousness and to give football-starved fans what they want, because it's a short season in general, even though it's getting longer with the added games. It is a relatively short season, and so they have to invent ways to get back into the discussion. And because we are so addicted to football, this becomes a very big deal, because we haven't had football in a long time, and there's been nothing else to really talk about football-wise. And so it's kind of the perfect little antidote right now.
Yeah, if you're a football fan, it's a malaise slaker is what it is. It's a distraction from... And it gets you excited about what's coming up next. What's coming up next tonight for the Wolves is Game 6, another late start, 8:40-ish or so. I assume we're not. I'll ask it this way: is it fair to say you will be gobsmacked if there is a starting lineup change tonight that most of us would consider interesting or startling?
I would be surprised, Dan. I do not think that Julius Randle is going to be moved out of the starting lineup, as a lot of fans want. I don't think they're going to move Rudy Gobert out of the starting lineup either. I think that, those are the two spots you look at right away just to see if there is a different look that you can throw. It doesn't really make a difference if you're starting Shannon or Conley or Io, in the backcourt as much. It would be a sea change if you were to change up the front court. And I think that Chris Finch is going to stick with it and just lean into the guys he has leaned into all season long and say, look, we just need more from you, especially Julius Randle. And he has, for 2 years now, really just expressed faith and loyalty to Randle. And I think that he believes that this is going to be the best way to keep going. And so that's what we're going to see to start Game 6 here tonight.
Is there a mid-course adjustment regarding the age-old question of trying as much as is possible for an already all-world defensive player to get distracted or to force that player to roam less, to give Wemby something else to think about? Because we know Rudy is just not much for any center to think about in terms of his offense. And the last series, you didn't have to worry about Joker roaming. He's not a roamer defensively. He doesn't do much defensively. So does that mean, regardless of who starts, you have to try more Nas or at least some other ways to occasionally get him where he can't literally roam from one end of the baseline to the other.
Yeah, I do think they need to do that, Dan. And I think there's two ways. It's been interesting to hear Chris Finch talk about approach going into this game, because I have kind of been of the mind that, hey, look, with him near the rim, with Rudy unable to draw him away, the key is just going to be you got to shoot threes and you got to make a lot of threes. I do think that they will and they do want to shoot more, but I don't think Chris Finch looks at that as sustainable or he looks at that as much more of a gamble.
Yeah.
Where he has talked a lot about needing to get Wemby moving side to side, because when he is moving side to side, then you can attack him a little bit more. We saw last game, Naz Reid get him moving side to side, then go downhill, put his shoulder into Wemby and moved him out of the way, and he scored at the rim. And I don't think they have done enough of that. We've talked about what they've done physicality-wise to Wemby on the offensive side of the court, where they're chipping and they're boxing out and they're elbowing and they're doing those things. But I think on when Wemby is on defense, they're going to focus on trying to be a little more physical with him, trying to bump him, trying to move him that way. And so, yeah, we'll see about how that all works. I know it's a dangerous thing.
He's under protection, I mean, he's been, as you know, nationally presented as the victim here. I worry about where that might lead.
You got to worry about it. I mean, the portrayal of him as this sort of wronged hero that returned to Game 5 was quite laughable to me, Dan. I mean, his elbow to Nas was as dirtier than anything Draymond Green's ever done, than anything, Charles Barkley or Dylan Brooks or any of these guys have done. And so he needed to atone to his own teammates because he lost his cool. But, this idea that he is exacting revenge on a team that has wronged him is laughable to me, because he brought all of that on himself.
100%. We've been talking about that on this show for at least the last 3 days. Is there a way also, because I think I remember some plays, and it's probably easier said than done, where I've almost seen him screened out long enough for then somebody to get past him, and where he, even with his wingspan and quickness, could not get back into the play at the basket.
Yeah, what you're talking about, Dan, is something called a Gortat screen, and that is an allusion to the old player Marcin Gortat. He kind of perfected this, where a ball handler is driving to the basket, and the big essentially boxes Wemby out, and it's not a screen, it's a box out before the ball handler gets to the rim, and then that opens a lane. And we saw Julius Randle do that early on in Game 1, and that was successful to an extent. We haven't seen as much of that lately, and I do think that it's a combination of things, but they first need to get a ball handler past the first line of defense. I'll give San Antonio credit. Their ball pressure on the perimeter with Castle and Harper and Fox has been outstanding, and it's been hard to get penetration. And so they need to get Io and Ant and Bones or Shannon or whoever by those guys, so that it offers an opportunity for Randall, for Rudy, for Nas to just move Wemby out of the way. If they can get that going, I think that will be effective. They just have had a hard time with that in the last few games.
Can we go back a long way in this series? It'll seem like about a year ago to, I guess it would be, we lost Game 3, right? A week ago tonight, right? 115 to 108. Wasn't that Game 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
One of the things I didn't talk about much on Sunday, and I don't remember if you've written anything about this or you and I have talked about it. I think Wemby got his 5th foul with about halfway through the 4th. And
might have been 8 minutes to go.
Is it even more? Okay. And I get it. Fans can lose their minds. You got to go after him. Everything you do, you got to get that last foul. You can't. So there's a limit to how far how obsessed you could become with that. If you're changing and subverting everything else you want to do to get one guy out. But it's Wemby. And did you talk to players about that? What did you think about that? Because I don't think, looking back, they did all that much to try to say, all right, we are going to put the heat on several times to see if we can almost force the ref to make a call.
Yeah, the first thing I want to do is give Mitch Johnson, the Spurs coach, his flowers, because there are a lot of coaches in that situation who would have taken Wemby out.
Yes.
And said, look, we can't lose him. And instead, he was like, man, we're in a meat grinder of a game. We can win this thing. I'm keeping my guy out there, and I'm trusting him. So really good on Mitch Johnson's part not to foul his own player out before he was fouled out and give him that opportunity. The second part about this is, Dan, you remember after game 1, the very inspirational quote that TJ Shannon had. Wemby has 12 blocks,
yes,
and Shannon says, he can block every one of them. I'm going to keep coming at him. Well, they haven't really followed that up the rest of this series. They have looked to me, Dan, like they are intimidated by Wembanyama, by his presence, and they are probably right about that. He's 7'6". He's been incredible. Like, I think that, though, they are giving him almost a little too much respect, that he has won the mind battle against them. And you see them once they get into the lane, it's a floater.
Yes.
It's kind of a weird rushed shot at a bad angle. And all of that is Wemby. And so they need to rediscover that mindset that TJ Shannon had. It might be okay if Wemby blocks 8 shots tonight, because that means they are still going at him and giving him those opportunities. And I just don't think they have tested him enough some of those times here, especially in game 3 in that fourth quarter when he was in foul trouble.
It's a very fair point. And, of course, it's easier said than done in the heat of the moment, because it's almost to me as if your decision should be pull up even further out than you are. In other words, for just a classic mid-range shot, or go all the way to the hoop and take your chances. Instead, what we are seeing is we're getting into the lane, and then we're going to try to loop it up way over him or sideways. And that's where they do look intimidated. It looks like he is changing their shots. So you're right. It's almost better to keep going, knowing that some are going to get blocked. Maybe you get a couple foul calls. Maybe you get past them. Or I'm not asking for more threes, but I am asking for maybe more what we would call mid-range shots. So I will be curious to see what our approach is there tonight. The team is, I don't have to tell you this, it's a mystifying club because they've had a great run. There's no arguing with that. But there's a part of me that always says, well, if you could figure out your offense and make it more consistent in that, there's times where it doesn't look recognizable. It certainly didn't look that way. It looked awful to me in the second quarter of the last game. But a lot of times I think this is related to Julius. And I don't know what you do there. You got him. You can't cut him now. Finchie, Guards and I were talking about this yesterday. I think Randall is the one player I can never remember Finchie tweaking publicly, and he's done everybody else at one time or another. So, do you agree with that? And B, what's that about? What is it? A blind spot? Is it stubbornness, or what do we make of that whole relationship? And is there a way to unlock him for? Let's just say, let's be optimistic. Games 6 and 7.
Yeah, so first of all, you're right. He almost never publicly tweaks Julius, and I'll say it because it happened one time this season, and I can't remember the game, but it did happen, and it was so notable that I made that my whole story, that, oh my gosh, Chris Finch has actually been publicly critical of Julius of 1,000 or 1,500 words in The Athletic, like literally. And so he doesn't do it, but I will tell you, it is not like because feels like he's coddling him. It's not that he has a blind spot. It's actually that he really knows what Julius responds to and what he doesn't. And so if you talk to players, if you talk to other coaches, there are moments in film sessions, in private film sessions, and in practices that are not open to the public that Chris Finch really does get after Julius, and that they will actually have arguments and they will go back and forth. And that kind of feedback is given to him. It's just that there is a belief that if he does it publicly, or if he does pull him out of the starting lineup, that is the kind of thing that will derail Julius from a mental standpoint. And we can look at it and say, oh, that's terrible. Why does he deserve that kind of credit? Well, he does because he's a really good player and he's really talented. And so Finch has gotten the most out of Julius since he's gotten here in general. And this has been the approach that he used. So it's very calculated on Chris Finch's part. He knows Ant can take the public flogging. He knows Jaden can take it or Naz can take it. He doesn't think that it will work with Julius. And so he goes about it a different way. Now, it is being tested right now because Julius has not been good. And so if he can somehow squeeze 2 really good Julius games out in these last 2 games and they go for it and they win, I mean, he will be validated for that. He was validated last year for it when, he didn't panic in the middle of the season and Julius played really well in the playoffs. So this is the approach that Finch has taken. He believes that's the best way to work it, but it is absolutely a choice on his part and not like he's playing favorites. He's just saying this is what he needs. So I got to coach him differently than what Ant or, Mike Conley or Rudy Gobert needs.
Wolves and Spurs tonight on the Fan, Game 6. Pre-game show, I'm assuming, will start about 8:30, maybe a little before that. But all the action on the flagship FM 100.3, the Fan. You mentioned Mitch Johnson. I didn't particularly love what he had to say after the Wemby cheap shot. But I have to tell you that if I give him a mulligan on that or say, well, that's the coach backing up his player, I'm impressed by this guy. And again, everybody could say, well, yeah, a lot of coaches look impressive if you got Wemby. But I like the way they run offense. I like his demeanor on the sidelines. And maybe I shouldn't be surprised, right? I mean, he's working. He worked with Pop, but he strikes me as a guy who's got a chance to last a while.
Yeah, I think so too, Dan. Like, I do think that there was a microscope on him going into the playoffs because he's not been here and he's young, and so you want to see how he responds. But in general, yeah, that comment, which I agree with you, you take that out of it. Just his in-game coaching, his preparation. I think Sean Sweeney, his assistant coach who runs the defense, deserves a lot of credit as well. But it is clear that this is an incredibly well-coached team that knows exactly what it is supposed to do and does it. I think one of the Wolves' weaknesses has been basketball IQ and making decisions in the heat of battle. Where the Spurs, with Wembanyama, with Harper, with Kessel, with a lot of these guys, they are just really smart players,
no question,
and they are being prepared by this coaching staff really, really well. And so they are actually playing above their experience level because they just adhere to the game plan and they execute that way. So they've been the cleaner executing team all series, and you didn't necessarily think that was going to be the case against a battle-tested team like the Timberwolves has been. The Wolves' experience has not been a factor for them in this series, and a lot of that, I think, does go to Mitch Johnson's credit and Sean Sweeney's credit.
Where does Jaden fit in tonight? Or if you want to talk proverbial, all right, somebody beyond Anthony, having a massive game, where does it need to come from in your opinion?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up, Dan, because I do think that if we're looking at viable scenarios to win tonight after really getting dominated in Game 5 and getting blown out in a couple of games this series, I think Jaden McDaniels is an X factor for them. I think this is a very tough matchup for Julius Randle. The activity that the Spurs have defensively, the way that they are strong and stout, Randle can't bully ball them as easily as he can other teams. It's very much like Oklahoma City, and so he gets into turnovers and he gets bad shot selection and he gets off of his spots. Jaden, I still think, has the ability to exert athletic superiority over some of these guys with his height, with his handle, with his ability to make tough shots. And so I think he needs to have a big game for the Wolves to survive and go to Game 7. And that probably means hitting a few more threes. He hit 3 the other night, which was good. He has his three-point shooting has fallen off a cliff in these playoffs. He needs to knock down those at a good rate tonight, but he also needs to attack and get that pull-up mid-range shot and knock those down He's been missing a lot of them in this series because of the defensive pressure, but McDaniels has all of the tools needed to be a real weapon, and he's just got to make shots that he normally makes. He's missed a lot of shots he normally makes, and so they need a good 24 points at least from him, and in addition to really good defense on Fox, to have a chance to win tonight.
They also need a good whistle. That's always the question. Is it going to be called tight or is it going to be called more loosely, which I certainly think in this series would favor the Wolves. Maybe not so much if they were somehow to get to the Oklahoma City series. That's another story for another conversation for another day. How do you look? I certainly don't think the Wolves can whine about the calls in the last game. They were so inept, especially in the second quarter, for big stretches. And then even after getting back into it later in the third, their offense was not presentable, I didn't think. But was the whistle, because I'd heard a couple people nationally say they thought the refs did try to protect Wemby a little bit too much. Looking back, what did you see there, and what might we expect tonight in that regard, given tonight, unlike that last game, it's here, not in San Antonio?
Yeah, I do think that it was a lighter whistle, Dan, in Game 5, and it seemed like the officials were determined not to let any of the lingering feelings from Game 4 kind of hang over and be re-sparked and maybe have even a bigger fight or something happen in that game. And so they called it tighter. And so was that unfortunate? It might have been for the Wolves, but I think that the problem is that at least two of the fouls that Jaden and Randall had, and Rudy I think even had one too, they were in the backcourt like 85 feet from the basket when the Spurs were headed back up the court. Those are just silly fouls. And so especially when you can tell early in the game that it is a tighter whistle, you can't be reaching in the backcourt. You can't be like trying to like move your body and hip check someone, 85 feet from the basket, because they're going to call that, and then you're in foul trouble a lot sooner than you should be. And so I put more of that on the Wolves in terms of not adjusting and recognizing that difference and being reckless with it. And so tonight I hope that they go back to the earlier whistle, Dan, because I want to see these two teams just slug it out and let the best team win. But if they don't, then the Wolves have to be smarter than they have been, and they have to adjust to it. And that's something that they have had problems with reading the game, throughout this series. And so I would be concerned if that's the case, if we see a couple of tight whistles early on. I don't think that favors the Wolves at all.
We're back to basketball IQ conversation there, which we'll have in more detail once their season ends. This comes in. I'm guessing this might be a burner account involving fallness. I'll just read it. Would love to hear more from Jonny Apathetic about how bad he feels for the hockey community. It sounds like Fallness is not accepting your olive branch, or he feels it's a bummerooski. It's a ruse where you pretend to be sensitive, as you did the other night in the wake of the Wild collapsing worse than they ever have in a postseason game in their history. He doesn't seem to be taking it as that you meant it genuinely, that maybe it was a little bit of patronizing on your part. Do you care to respond?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I can't win in the hockey community, Dan. Like, I thought it legitimately was a high road take, because I do know that this fan base in all of the sports has been through the ringer for 35 years. And so when you have a collapse of that magnitude with a team that you really believed in, that you really thought was capable of going to great heights and maybe even ending this championship drought, it is an absolutely gut-wrenching, vomit-inducing feeling. And so I do like to have my fun with the hockey community, and most of it is usually responding to something that has been fired in my direction, but I'm not going to do that right now with this group, and I wasn't going to do that in that moment. It generally was a feeling of just empathy for their situation, because that was absolutely brutal to go up 3-0 and then to just fall apart like they did. And that is not the time to poke the bear because emotions are raw. And so I was genuine in my expression of sympathy, and we'll see, what happens later down the road. But right now, there's just no time for that because, these guys are hurting and they should be, and I am not going to be stoking any fires with that.
Johnny, we'll see you later tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
That's Johnny Athletic, John Krasinski. He'll be at Target Center later this evening for game number 6, Wolves and Spurs, which you can hear, of course, all the action on the flagship pregame show, game, postgame show. I don't know if there's any howling with the homies tonight. I'm guessing not, but I'm not sure. This comes in from Steve out of Andover. Dan, I went to trade school in Quincy, Illinois. Falstaff beer was $6.99 for a 24-pack. $6.99 for a 24-pack. It slaked many a thirsty day back in 1974.
You're listening to Barreiro on the Fan.
From the 1-800-ASK-GARY Traffic Center. This